I knew she was gonna screw me the second she called me kiddo in the quarterly all hands. I'm 34. I've got 2 slipped discs, plantar fasciitis, and I drink black coffee like it's a prescription. But yeah, kiddo. And that was right after Meredith walked on stage and unveiled my feature, a data sync protocol I spent 3 Thanksgivings debugging, as if she coded it in a fever dream between pillates and passive-aggressive Slack emojis. I didn't even get a mention, not even a shout-out to the team. Just her, grinning like she discovered fire, while the rest of us sat clapping like underpaid seals. 5 years. That's how long I held that company's tech stacked together with digital duct tape and hope. I was the back-end, front-end, uptime, downtime, coffee runs, crisis calls at 2 a.m., all of it. If Meredith was the face of the company, I was the spine. God knows she had no clue where any of the bones connected. Honestly, I didn't do it for glory. I liked building. I like solving things. There's something stupidly romantic about pushing code at midnight while the office is dark and quiet, and the only sound is the janitor humming old Bon Jovi in the hallway. I like being the reason things worked. But over time, that pride turned sour. It's funny, most folks don't know this, but 97% of people who listen to stories like this never hit that subscribe button or tap like. If you're in that group, hey, no shade, but it really does help us keep sharing these wild, true tales from the heart of corporate America. So if you're enjoying this so far, do us a solid. Hit like. Maybe even subscribe. It means more than you know, seriously. Anyway, Meredith, she knew how to work a room. Had that LinkedIn influencer charm. You know the type? Big hand gestures, fake relatable stories about humble beginnings in a WeWork, and a way of saying team effort while making sure the spotlight stayed on her face. She once told a group of angel investors that her vision for the platform came to her during a silent meditation retreat. Meanwhile, I was home with a 101-degree fever trying to figure out why the analytics module was leaking memory like a faucet in a cheap motel. But I stayed through layoffs, budget cuts, and that one Christmas when payroll accidentally went out late and we all got Venmo'd half our checks with the subject line, "I owe you Christmas tree." I stayed because deep down I thought I mattered. I thought maybe she saw it too in her own twisted, controlling, HR-polished way. She called me her safety net once. Said, if anything ever breaks, I know you'll catch it before anyone notices. And I did, over and over, until I didn't. There was this one stretch, 2 months straight, where our only DevOps guy quit, and instead of replacing him, Meredith said, why don't you just absorb it? You're already touching the APIs, right? Touching the APIs. Like I was fondling code instead of writing the back-end architecture that powered every single client dashboard. But fine, I absorbed it. I built the deployment pipelines, patched security holes, handled uptime monitors, and personally carried our uptime back above 99.95%. And when a certain Fortune 100 client threatened to drop us because of latency issues, I stayed up 4 nights straight until I rebuilt their environment from scratch. I was too tired to even present the fix. I just emailed it in. Meredith screen-shared it the next day to a round of investor applause, claimed she led the team through the storm. I didn't even bother to correct her. I just went back to my keyboard like always. By year 5, I had stopped expecting anything. No bonuses, no credit, no equity. Just the slow drip of gaslight compliments and the occasional coffee gift card with a note that said you're a lifesaver, while she flew business class to pitch my work as her legacy. But I'll tell you the exact moment the resentment turned into something sharper. It was a Tuesday, late spring. Meredith was giving a webinar to some up-and-coming VCs, and I had to sit in the Zoom chat fielding tech questions. Someone asked how we handled real-time load balancing. Meredith smiled and said, "Oh, that's all part of the dynamic architecture I built early on. I've always believed in engineering resilience." My screen cracked a little from how hard I clenched my jaw. That dynamic architecture was a rat's nest I rebuilt from scratch after her original spec doc turned out to be a Pinterest board with arrows. That night, I walked home and thought, if I disappeared tomorrow, this whole place would fall apart. I wasn't wrong. It happened on a Wednesday. Wednesdays were usually quiet, midweek fog, half the team working remote, nobody breathing down your neck yet about Friday deadlines. I came in early like I always did, because some Jenkins jobs were failing overnight and Meredith wanted the platform spotless for new client demo. I fixed the issue in under 10 minutes. No one noticed. No one ever did. At 9:42 a.m., I got the Slack ping. "Hey, can you swing by my office real quick?" Smiling face with smiling eyes, that emoji. Meredith always used smileys like she was softening a blow she knew would hurt. I grabbed my coffee, cold by then, and headed in. Figured she wanted a status update or maybe to ask if we could slightly rework the API for a last-minute feature request she promised someone over Risay. She was sitting on the edge of her desk, not behind it, power move. Her phone was face down, her laptop closed. I knew instantly something was off. She smiled, not warm, not apologetic, just tight and rehearsed. "I'll get right to it," she said, voice syrupy. "This isn't easy. We've made the decision to eliminate your position. It's a strategic realignment." I blinked. "Wait, what?" "We're rethinking engineering spend. The board wants lean, nimble, adaptive." I didn't speak. I just stared at her, heart suddenly pounding like I'd sprinted. Then she tilted her head like she was doing me a favor by saying it clearly. You were just scaffolding, she said. Vital while we were building, but now the structure's sound. We can stand without it. That's when my ears started ringing. I actually had to swallow to keep from laughing. Scaffolding. I had built her structure. And she thought it could stand without me? We've brought in a DevOps consultant, she continued, fractional. He'll take over the infrastructure bits, like my entire job could be parceled out to a part-timer from Upwork. I opened my mouth, closed it, tried again. You're firing me? We're eliminating the role, she said quickly, HR trained. Lawyer approved, you'll get a standard package, 2 months severance. If you prefer to skip the goodbyes, I totally understand. We can clear your things later. My fingers tightened around my coffee cup. I remember thinking, absurdly, don't crush it. It's the nice ceramic one. You have 5 minutes, she added, already moving to sit behind her desk. Thank you again for everything. I walked out of her office like a ghost, past the glass-walled conference room where her assistant was prepping color-coded decks, past the interns talking about burrito bowls. Nobody knew. Nobody looked up. I was disappearing quietly, the same way I had worked. At my desk, I didn't cry, didn't rage. I sat down, stared at my screen, and took 3 deep breaths. Meredith thought I was scaffolding? Fine. But she just removed the one thing holding up her whole damn tower. In my inbox was already a calendar invite from HR. 10:30, exit process. I stared at it, fingers hovering over the keyboard. 2 months, that's what 5 years of my life was worth. 2 months and a thank you email. I opened Slack, typed a goodbye message in the dev channel. Something polite, empty. Got a handful of heart emojis and wait, what? Replies. Nobody pinged me privately. I was alone. Utterly, and I'd never seen things more clearly. Meredith didn't understand what she'd done. Not yet, but she would. The last day didn't feel like a last day. No farewell lunch, no awkward card with everyone's signatures, no fake tears from people who never learned how to pronounce my last name. Just silence and a sterile checklist from HR, emailed at 8:01 a.m. with the subject line, final steps for offboarding, return badge, sign NDA, deactivate accounts. Smile and vanish. I showed up at 9 a.m. sharp, mostly because I wanted to control how it ended. If they were going to erase me, I was going to choose how I disappeared. My desk was already stripped, someone must have pre-cleared it. The only thing left was a sad little succulent with 2 dead leaves and a coffee mug that said, I debug, therefore I am. I took the mug, left the plant. Most people didn't even know I was still there. Meredith wasn't in yet. Morning alignment with investors, according to her calendar. The same investors she'd be pitching the platform to in a few weeks. The same platform I built, piece by undocumented piece. I sat down one last time and opened my laptop. No one hovered, no one questioned. I pulled up the admin dashboard for the internal API registry. It looked the same as always, unassuming, clinical, just rows and rows of keys with UIDs and access levels. Mine was at the top, labeled System Bootstrap Root, the one that tied together half the infrastructure. It was never supposed to be like that. Years ago, when we were scrappy and broke, I told Meredith we needed a proper license for the enterprise-level API gateway. Something secure, scalable, with redundancy. She waved it off, said, we're not there yet, just use what you've got. You're smart, you'll figure it out, so I did. I used my developer key. Temporarily, I told myself, just until we got funding. But funding came, twice. And every time I asked to replace the architecture, to untangle the brittle web that relied on my identity to function, she said the same thing, not a priority. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, so I became the linchpin. Quietly, permanently. They scaled the company on top of a piece of me, and now they were pushing me out without even bothering to check what I took with me. I hovered over the toggle. Disabling the key wouldn't shut everything down yet. I wasn't stupid or vindictive. I wasn't going to drop the hammer while clients were live. But the demo environment? The sandbox Meredith would be using to pitch a $35 million round that ran on my key. Click, status, revoked. Timestamp 10:17 a.m. User redacted, no fanfare, no fireworks, just one less key in the system. I closed the dashboard, cleared my cache, and signed out of every tool. Slack, Jira, GitHub, all of it. Then I stood up, slid my laptop into the hand-me-down company tote I never returned, and walked to HR for the final handshake. Anything you'd like to say? The rep asked, all soft voice and practiced sympathy. I smiled, nope, all good, and I meant it. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. Because the platform was now a house with no foundation. Meredith had no idea she was standing on a trapdoor. The first Monday without work hit like a prank no one bothered to finish. I still woke up at 6:30, muscle memory dragging me into my routine, made coffee, opened my laptop, checked the internal uptime dashboard, only to remember I didn't have access anymore. It was quiet. The kind of quiet that hums like tinnitus. No pings, no bug reports, no Meredith forwarding passive-aggressive emails from clients with the subject line, urgent P1 issue at 11:48 p.m. Just silence and the sound of my neighbor's dog losing its mind over a squirrel. I stared at my inbox. Nothing, not even a LinkedIn message. 5 years of digital blood, sweat, and burnout, and I vanished like cached data, dumped, flushed, and forgotten. The bitterness came in waves, not rage, not drama, just that dull throb of being discarded like a used Kleenex. You spend half a decade stitching a system together like Frankenstein's intern, and the second it looks alive, they push you out and call it a miracle. I checked the company site. They'd updated the team page. My picture was gone. They'd even cropped me out of the group photo from last year's retreat, like I never existed, like my name wasn't in half the code base. I met up with a friend that afternoon, Lisa, former QA lead before she burned out and switched to dog grooming. She looked at me like I was a fresh bruise. You could sue, she said. Wrongful termination, hostile work environment, IP theft. I stirred my coffee. No contract violations. They made sure of that. She leaned in, then do a LinkedIn takedown. Air it all out. Meredith's a fraud and you know it. I shook my head. No, I'll wait. Wait for what? You'll see. She sat back and blinked. Damn, that's scarier than I expected. I smiled, but there wasn't much warmth in it. Just wait. See, the thing about Meredith was she always believed the spotlight made her untouchable. She believed charisma could plug any leak, polish any glitch, outshine any weakness. But charisma doesn't debug a failing API. Charm doesn't maintain uptime at scale. And public speaking doesn't replace the person who actually wrote the engine. So I waited. Not because I was plotting. Not because I needed to see her fall. But because I knew gravity doesn't need help. Over the next few weeks, I rebuilt my resume, but I didn't send it. Took long walks. Rearranged my bookshelf. Played Stardew Valley until my farm was more functional than our production environment ever was. Every time I heard ping from my phone, I half expected it to be someone from the team realizing what they'd lost. It never came. The silence was instructional. I really thought they were fine. Good, I kept tabs, quietly checked the site. Scanned job postings, saw that they'd listed a role for platform optimization consultant. Sounded like a hatchet job wrapped in a thesaurus. Then I heard from a friend of a friend that Meredith was prepping for new funding round. Big one, 35 million, investors from the coast, public pitch, live demo. My eyebrows raised, but I didn't say a word, didn't call anyone, didn't warn her. Just bookmarked the event page and brewed another cup of coffee. Sometimes the best revenge isn't what you do. It's what you already did. It started as a whisper on Reddit of all places. Some junior dev posted a brag in a niche startup thread, something like, "Wish us luck." Our fearless leaders pitching the Big Fish Next Week Rocket Hash Series B #TechLife, I recognized the company name instantly. My company, or rather, company that used to be mine, until Meredith scraped me off like expired UX. That's how I found out she was prepping for a $35 million investor pitch. Not from some insider tip, not from an old colleague reaching out, but from a 22-year-old Redditor trying to manifest funding with emojis. The next breadcrumb was LinkedIn. Meredith updated her banner, a quote about vision over velocity. The glamour shot headshot so aggressively filtered she looked like she'd been rendered in Unreal Engine. Her job title was now Founder Visionary Product Architect. Architect. That word made my eye twitch. The caption, excited to share our journey with some incredible partners next week. The platform is stronger than ever, stronger than ever. I could almost hear her saying it, hand over heart, fake humility on full display. Probably practicing in front of a ring light, repeating my roadmap like it came to her in a lucid dream. By the end of that week, word had spread. Even people outside the company were buzzing. Meredith had built this narrative around resilience through lean scaling. She pitched herself as the woman who single-handedly held the product together through turbulent times. Turbulent times equals me, sleeping under my desk during the great outage of Q3, me, ditching third-party services together with undocumented SDKs while she drank Prosecco at founder brunches. Me, writing shell scripts in my bathtub because my home office lost power and no one else could fix the cron job failing every 6 hours. But sure, she held it together. A mutual from an old Slack channel messaged me, "Yo, is it true Meredith axed you and then started pitching your platform to West Coast VCs?" I replied with one word, "Yep," followed by another, "Good," because I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I was ready. I could see her in my mind, standing in some sleek downtown event space, all glass walls and catered acai bowls, rehearsing in front of her team. Let's get the demo loaded. Everyone log into the sandbox. The very same sandbox environment that had been duct taped together with my personal API key. The one she never replaced. The one she never even checked. I imagined her clicking through dashboards, smiling for the photographers, dropping buzzwords like breadcrumbs, real-time analytics, self-healing architecture, frictionless scalability. I imagined her basking in the oohs and ahs as the investors nodded, impressed, not knowing what was coming. That demo was a loaded gun with a velvet trigger, and she was about to pull it. The part that made it perfect was how much she believed in her own story. That's always the fatal flaw with people like Meredith. They think charisma can outrun consequences. They think if they smile wide enough, the math won't matter. But platforms don't care about smiles, and keys, when revoked, don't come back. The pitch was scheduled for Thursday at 11 a.m. I cleared my calendar, made popcorn, and waited. Thursday, 10:58 a.m. I had the live stream open in one tab, muted. The pitch wasn't public, of course, it never is. But Meredith being Meredith, she couldn't resist broadcasting a fireside chat version of it for brand optics. Just her, a mic clipped to her perfectly creased blouse, a few fawning moderators, and a room full of investor buzzards pretending to sip coffee while deciding who'd get rich off her next exaggeration. I sat on my couch, laptop balanced on one knee, cold brew in hand. My dog snored at my feet. The world outside carried on like nothing monumental was about to happen, but I knew better. I refreshed the private Discord server I still had access to. One of the junior devs forgot to remove me, or maybe they didn't want to. A message popped up in the general thread, they're starting the demo. All logins green. I took a breath, long and steady. Heartbeat slow but loud. Not joy, not revenge lust, just focus, anticipation. Cold and coiled like a wire pulled tight. On screen, Meredith appeared. Camera found her at the edge of a modern stage, brick background, Edison bulbs hanging like the ghosts of startups past. She had that signature look on her face, performative humility glazed in ambition. She thanked everyone for showing up, gave her usual story about building something from nothing, and launched into the pitch with the confidence of a cult leader selling bottled air. "I've always believed that simplicity scales," she said, gliding across the stage. "And this platform, our platform, is the proof. Our cute," she waved at the screen behind her. A sleek demo environment was projected overhead, client dashboards, real-time metrics, pretty graphs with fictional uptime. All of it hooked into the sandbox I used to babysit. Our demo environment mirrors what our users experience in production. Live data, no tricks. Just results, no tricks. That part almost made me laugh. Investors pulled out their phones and tablets. Some logged in via QR code. Others tapped credentials into branded iPads handed out by her assistants. The Discord thread started pinging again. "Everything's fine, no lag, we're good. God, I hope she doesn't screw this up." I leaned back, sipped my coffee, said nothing. On stage, Meredith smiled wider. She was glowing now, pacing, gesturing, painting futures in midair with phrases like scalable vision and unified analytics. Every word rolled out like it was part of a TED clone, but I wasn't listening to what she said. I was watching the timer in my head. See, when I revoked that key, I didn't kill it instantly. I set it to expire. Delayed action. Just enough for the sandbox to idle on cash and confidence. But once the cache cleared, once the load hit the right threshold, it would choke. I looked at the clock. 11:09 a.m. On stage, Meredith was about to demo the flagship dashboard. "We're going to walk through a simulated client interaction to show you exactly how seamless this platform really is." She tapped a button. The screen blinked and blinked again. Back in Discord, wait. Anyone else getting timeout errors? The sandbox just hung. I turned up the volume. Meredith's mic was picking up a faint shift in her tone now. Not panic yet, just the tiniest hitch. She tapped again, still nothing. "Looks like we're having a little refresh issue," she said with a practiced chuckle. "Just a minor hiccup, should be back in a second." Investors glanced around. One refreshed their screen. Blank. Another tried reloading and got a red 404 banner. Phones were coming out. Murmurs rippled across the room like a cold wind. Back in Discord, "I think the API's dead. Logs say invalid credentials." Who changed the sandbox config? They didn't know yet, but I did, and so did the key. At first, it was just one screen. Front row, left side, some bearded guy in a gray blazer squinted, tilted his iPad, refreshed, then frowned like it had personally insulted him. He tapped again. Nothing. Then the second screen froze, then the third. Like dominoes in slow motion, demo after demo stopped responding. Graphs vanished. Load times stalled. Animations spun forever like they were stalling for time that no longer existed. I watched from my living room as the wave rolled over the room. A few investors coughed politely. One raised a hand. Another whispered to a colleague, shielding their phone like it held trade secrets. And Meredith kept smiling, but it was a mask now, tight around the edges. "Oh, looks like we've got a little hiccup," she said with that brittle charm she'd always weaponized. "Should be right back. Our dev team is just fine-tuning some background refresh logic." Lies, pretty stalling lies. I'd heard her say them to clients 100 times, but there was no dev team behind the curtain. There was no fix coming because I wasn't there to fix it. I leaned forward, elbows on knees, laptop glowing with the Discord thread now in full-blown panic, all sandbox users down. API endpoint returns 404, not cached, this is core. Who the F pulled the key? The key, my key, the one they never replaced, the one Meredith forgot was me. On the screen, Meredith was starting to sweat. Not much, just a shine along the brow, a little tightness around the mouth, her clicker stalled. The giant screen behind her had gone full white box 404. Error, resource not found. You could hear the room shift. The air got thick. People weren't whispering anymore, they were murmuring in full sentences. Investors were checking their devices, side-eyeing each other. Phones buzzed with internal group chats Meredith couldn't see. She kept talking, like she could keep the illusion alive if she just filled the space with enough adjectives. This is the beauty of working live, right? She said with a forced laugh. You see the product in action, warts and all. Warts, 404 isn't a wart, it's a corpse. The murmuring grew, chairs creaked. Someone in the back audibly said, "Is this the real environment or a demo?" And Meredith, oh Meredith, still tried to fake control. This isn't indicative of the real product. Obviously, there's a temporary access conflict. Our engineers are already looking into it. We'll have it resolved in just a moment. Her voice cracked halfway through that sentence. Discord lit up again. The token was hard-coded. It's gone. Everything linked to it just died. Why was this even tied to a personal key? I could have answered that. I could have explained how 5 years ago she told me to just make it work without proper funding. I could have reminded her that I warned her more than once. But no one listens to scaffolding. They only notice when it's gone and the building starts to crumble. On stage, Meredith's smile was gone. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the clicker like it could save her. One assistant was now crouched near the AV booth, whispering into a headset. Another stood off stage, pale, motionless, clutching a tablet that refused to load. The crash was here. Total failure, not a flicker, not a stutter. Just 404, and I didn't need to gloat. Because that error message said everything I couldn't. The whisper came around 11:18 a.m. By then, the room was a minefield of crossed arms and raised eyebrows. Investors were no longer pretending to be polite. They were scanning the exits, refreshing their devices in angry loops, mumbling things like waste of time and this wasn't in the deck. On stage, Meredith stood frozen mid-pivot, her mouth half open like she'd just forgotten a line from a play she wrote but never understood. That's when her assistant, Talia, I think, emerged from the wing. Clipboard clutched to her chest like a shield, face pale, steps quick and careful like someone approaching a wounded animal. She didn't speak right away. Just reached up, stood on tiptoe, and leaned into Meredith's ear. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. I knew exactly what she said, because I wrote the punchline 5 weeks ago. On the stream, Meredith stiffened. You could actually see the moment her spine locked and her eyes widened, not just in panic, but in recognition. Her whole face went still, like the image froze, but the video kept playing. She blinked. Once. Twice. And then she turned, slowly, robotically, toward the backstage screen that still flashed 404. Resource not found in bold, unapologetic letters. In Discord, the devs were scrambling. It was her old root key. We never rebuilt the auth layer after she left. Who approved this architecture? Someone, bless them, finally typed it out. This whole thing was built on her credentials, me. Meredith's hands were shaking now. I could see it. She tried to lower the mic, fumbled, dropped it against her hip with a loud thump. Talia stepped forward again, offering the clipboard. Meredith waved her off too hard. You could hear her breathe into the mic, sharp and uneven. Her eyes scanned the room like she was looking for an escape route, or maybe a time machine, because now she understood. Every pixel of the demo environment, every graph, every click, every client simulation, it all lived and died on the back of a single API key. Key she never replaced. A key she never even asked about after firing me because I was just scaffolding. And scaffolding in her world was never meant to outlast the paint job. The irony was almost poetic. She fired the person who built the foundation and then leaned her entire future against it without checking if it was still standing. And now it wasn't. I didn't cheer, didn't punch the air, didn't take a screenshot. Oh, God knows I could have sold it for 1,000 office workers worth of catharsis. Instead, I watched her unravel. From hundreds of miles away in sweatpants and with a chipped mug of microwave coffee, I watched the power I used to carry silently become thunder in someone else's hands, and watched it knock Meredith flat on her flawless, polished ass. For once, I didn't need to say a damn thing. The silence was doing it for me. She didn't move. Meredith stood center stage, paralyzed in a storm of whispers and silent judgment, as the giant screen behind her glared back with one final message: resource not found. There was nowhere to pivot, no monologue, no metaphor, no branding jargon slick enough to salvage it. She tried. God, she tried. This isn't, obviously there's been an oversight. A technical miscommunication. Her voice cracked on the word technical. A ripple of discomfort spread through the room. Some investors looked away, embarrassed for her. Others just stared, unimpressed, faces stone cold with that brutal kind of clarity that only shows up when someone's mask finally slips. She took a step back. The mic clipped to her jacket picked up her shaky breath. You could almost see her run through the mental math. How fast can I blame the dev team? Can I spin this? Can I promise a fix in the follow-up deck? Will they buy pilot environment stress test? But it didn't matter. No one was buying anything. Because the product, the platform she sold as her brainchild, her baby, her vision, was visibly, undeniably dead in the water. And she didn't even know where the engine was. And the silence? Oh, the silence was biblical. No assistants running in with a fix. No miracle laptop rising from the crowd with a secret backup. Just Meredith, white as printer paper, mouth slightly open, blinking like her contact lens had betrayed her too. I watched from my living room. No emotion on my face, just stillness, not joy, not vengeance. Just the deep, resonant click of a lock turning somewhere inside me. A chapter ending not with applause, but with failure sinking its claws into the right person for once. She had told me I was scaffolding, that I was never meant to be part of the final structure. She was right, because scaffolding comes down once the structure stands. But what she built, it never stood. The second I stepped away, the whole thing crumbled like a stage prop made of cardboard and arrogance. No alerts came in, no apologies, no desperate DMs. Meredith didn't try to reach out, didn't beg for help, didn't suddenly realize my worth in some last-minute redemption arc. She just stood there, ghost white, as investors packed up their laptops, half-mumbled excuses, and walked out with the kind of cold detachment usually reserved for bad theater. She didn't cry, she didn't collapse, but she froze. A statue of hubris, finally realizing there was never any magic, only someone else's work behind the curtain. And me, I closed the laptop. Let the video feed vanish into nothing. I didn't need closure. I didn't need her downfall to be loud or televised or dramatic. I just needed it to be real, and it was. The platform was gone, the illusion shattered, the empire exposed as hollow. Meredith, for all her sparkle, was just another grifter in heels selling mirrors to people who wanted windows. And I was done being scaffolding. No gloating, no comeback arc, no second chances. Just a cold, clean freedom. Bridges burned, earth salted. And finally, quiet. Thanks for watching, you cubicle warriors. Hit that subscribe button. Unless you're my old boss, then you're on your own. Revenge of the Coffee Pot strikes again.